What's going on, my Central Units? It's the Central Man here. So this is a brand new series on this channel. I'm going to review Rick and Morty. So I'm going to review the first season of the show. The show's been around for 12 and a half, well, almost 13 years. I was planning to review Rick and Morty. I had this idea of reviewing Rick and Morty for years now. It's in my head, this whole idea. So I'm waiting for the right time to do it. So the time is now. So I'm reviewing the first season of the show. It's about 11 episodes. And it's one of my favorite shows, you know. My first exposure to Rick and Morty, it's not the actual show, but they appeared on an episode of The Simpsons. You know, it's the, you know, if you watch The Simpsons, they do the couch gag. They appeared in the couch gag. You know, you had Morty crash Rick's spaceship onto The Simpsons, you know, and then he went to another. I think it was like, I can't remember the couch gag. You know, you had Rick is looting their stuff, freezing Ned Flanders, and then suddenly, I think it's the agreements to bring back the Simpsons back to life, but instead they kind of like brought the Simpsons back to life, but instead they got like Rick's head on top. Really, they basically got the Simpsons' bodies, but Rick's head on him. So that's my first exposure to Rick and Morty. I don't know if that was a kid's cartoon or an adult cartoon. It's technically an adult's cartoon. So, and that's my first exposure to Rick and Morty. So I think it's since 2018 since like I started watching the show, the actual show of Rick and Morty. I've seen, so far I've seen season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4, season 5, season 6. Haven't seen 7 and 8. The reason why I haven't seen season 7 and 8, because they got rid of the creator and the voice actor who voiced Rick and Morty, Justin Roiland, because of, the accusations, and they kind of recast Rick and Morty. I don't like the new voice actor of Morty, so I might review 7 and 8, season and 8 in the future. But I'm going to focus on reviewing the first season of the show. So anyway, so the first episode of Rick and Morty is called Pilot, just Pilot. So the images you're about to see, I'm going to do it in a random order instead of in the correct order of it. I think I did it when I reviewed season 19 of South Park. I just randomly put them in a random order, the images of an episode. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, so you focus on the main 4 characters of the show. Rick, Morty, Beth, and Jerry. Even though some appeared a little bit of this episode. So it's just, it's funny. It's all about an adventure of an old grandpa and his granddaughter and his grandson traveling, whether it's space or a different dimension. So, in the picture you see seeing Rick is drunk. He's driving his car, little space car. You're planning to bomb the universe, something like that. Rick is nonsensical. He's so fucking drunk, and he said to Morty's gonna take his not his girlfriend, but taking Jessica with her, with them. Morty says, Jessica, the girl in my math class, and he tells Rick that he doesn't say he doesn't know her, but basically she barely know exist, and Rick says he's gonna make Morty and Jessica the new Adam and Eve. So, and they find out like they're fighting over the steering wheel of Rick's car, and Rick tells Morty that it was a test, and then you got the credit scene for the show, and then like in the end of the intro of the show, you see like I think it's Cthulhu, and you see like Rick, Summer, and Morty chased by Cthulhu. I feel like Summer grabbing the kid of Cthulhu. That was only made for the intro. So anyway, you see Morty, he's just sleepy. He's so tired because Rick took him out. Self-proclaimed he's gonna nuke, but he didn't nuke, or he made the bomb. He said he made this car out of garbage. So anyway, and in this episode, Jerry wants to put Rick in a old folks home. First off, he said he tells Rick that how Morty's gonna pass his class if you take him along for his sci-fi high concept rigmarole. So Jerry has a point. Jerry's not. I don't really hate Jerry. I don't think he's annoying. I think he's just. He has these moments, but I think he's sometimes a bit unfunny. But he has a point in this episode how Morty's going to pass his class if Rick take him along to go in, whether he's going to space or a different dimension. So, Rick says school's the waste of time. He kind of manipulate Beth because Rick, Beth is Rick's daughter. Saying you made the crap out of those eggs. Hope your mom wasn't around to see it, and seeing Beth got emotional. And we'll get to. I think we in the later scenes we introduce the mom. That's another story for another time. So anyway, so it's funny. Morty's in school. He's tired. Was it Mr. Goldenfold? I think that's the black teacher with the Cleveland brown mustache. Referring to the character from Family Guy. They were just basically doing basic maths. Two was it 2 out of 2? Was it not 2? It's not 2 times, but it's 2 out of 2. Something like that, And then Morty keeps saying Jessica's name, and Jessica's wondering who's saying her name, and then Morty's dreaming she's in this white background with the numbers, and you thought Jessica allowed Morty to touch her breast, and said she named her breast after Morty, and then Morty's touching the breast, unfortunately touching the boobs of Mr. Goldenfold. Was it Goldenfold? That's not a lot of this character in the show. I don't think the character appeared in a lot of episodes. I think he appeared in few episodes of season 1. I think he appeared in one episode of season 2, and you never see him ever again. I don't know what happened to the voice actor of the character. So it's just what it is. So not really an uninteresting character. He's just basically a forgotten character of the show. So Morty's just basically just touching his breast, and you had Goldenfold. Is it Goldenfold? I can't really pronounce this guy's name, but he said 5 more minutes of that, I'm gonna be really angry. So and also Morty, let's get back to Jessica. Jessica is just I don't know. I think Morty's 14 years of age. I think 14 years of age, or 12, 13, 14 years of age, and Jessica's probably older. I don't know. I think you can tell by the height difference. In the height difference between, maybe it's Jessica's a bit taller, Morty's a bit shorter. Morty's 14. I feel like he's probably younger to be a teenager. I think maybe he is a teenager. I think he's confirmed in the Morty's Mind Blower episode. He's an adolescent boy. So yeah, he's got to be like 13, 14. So he got picked on by this guy called Frank. He's this greaser. He didn't do anything. I think he's getting something out of his locker. He's got confronted by this guy with this Frank guy. Was it Puluki? But anyway, so threatened him with the knife, with the switchblade, saying like, "Oh, you're making fun of me because I'm poor. Oh, you're telling me how to bully. I'm rich. I'm gonna cut you up." And Rick just showed up at no time to freeze Frank Pulaki. Yeah, Morty never got bullied in the throughout the show. He's kind of like 50-50. Like, I think the next time he got bullied was the season. I think it was the first. Yeah, not third. It was the fourth season of the show. It was the first episode of the fourth season of the show. I think it was like the parody of, what's it called? The parody of, it was Akira. Like, you got this ginger head guy trying to kill Morty. Morty's got the crystal on his forehead. With him as an old man. Jessica, him and Jessica is old, and that's another like season for another time. I want to focus on season 1, but anyway, so it's funny, like, Morty telling him to, he kind of, not bullied, he kind of forced Morty to go on an adventure to go to another dimension. I'll get to that shortly. And then see Summer, seeing this Frank Pulaki, he's frozen, and, he said hi Frank, and Frank he's basically was smashed in a million pieces. Like, he's just in ice. Morty I think he told Rick to unfreeze him. Can you unfreeze him? And then Rick says, I'll do that later. And then suddenly he just basically he's completely shattered like pieces of glass. Like some bits of the episode, I think it's like later on in the episode, I feel like Beth and Jerry, like, and was it Principal Vagina, informing them about Morty. Beth saw like Summer. There was like the other kids, like did a tribute. They set up like a crucifix, a memorial thing towards Frank. Summer's crying, and then going to the end of the episode, Frank, he said, she cried and she shouted like, Frank Pulaki has died. And Rick says, I don't know. I can't really do the voice impression of. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I feel like Vagina, Principal Vagina says, like, there's no way that a Latino person did it. And it got me thinking, is Rick a Latino or Hispanic or Spanish? Because of his surname, Sanchez, Is he really Hispanic? Is Beth Hispanic, But, even though, like, the pale skin, I don't know. It's very debatable. Anyway, so, the whole plot of this episode is basically, for Jerry getting, Rick put in a, old folks home because of Morty, man. Like, I think he went to the place that Beth works, because Beth works her job is a horse surgeon. It's once before that there was one scene before we get cut to the scene of Beth performing surgery on a horse. There was I think it was a different color horse, struggling, resisting. I get a lot of people like horses, or people, they hate hospitals because in that if you're afraid that you're not going to see them, you end up like not walking out alive. So anyway, so he said, he said to Beth that oh, my lunch break, Jerry's lying. Jerry doesn't have a job. It's funny, like Jerry mooch off Beth. Like Rick, we don't know what Rick's doing. You can tell Rick is a scientist. You can tell, I think he's retired or semi-retired. No, because he goes to space and dimension. You got Beth is a horse surgeon, and Rick and Summer, Morty and Summer, they're going to school. Yeah, Jerry is just a fucking loser, man. Doesn't have a job. Like, we appeared of this Devon character, and then I think he said, like, Jerry went dark, if he said that if I catch you having an affair with this guy, I'm going to come to the same hotel room to blow my brains out. Like, wow, his marriage is a joke, But we never seen that. I think we don't see him until the 4th episode of this season, and then you won't see him again because I'll get to that episode in the future. So anyway, Beth informs Jerry that Morty is struggling at school before Rick moved back into our lives. And he said, like, Morty's make a new friend. I think she has a point, because I think Morty doesn't have any friends. I feel sad for Morty. I don't know how, it's a shame he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't, like, he kind of get picked on, but I don't know, he don't really get picked on that much often. Jessica he's not that type of girl, like, oh, laughing at Morty. She's basically the bimbo. I guess Morty made a friend, out of Rick. Even though Rick and Morty are grandfather and grandson, so she kind of had a point. So yeah, and so yeah, By the way, I'm doing it. I'm discussing the plot in a random order instead of in a correct order. So anyway, Principal Vagina. I can't pronounce. What's the name of the school? Like is it Harry Hampton's High School? So I can't remember. But anyway, he informed Beth and Jerry that Morty attends. I think he attends school 7 hours a day in the last 2 months. Jerry celebrate like, booyah, he's ruined our lives. Why I'm celebrate that? Why I'm celebrate about this? He's about Rick is ruining Morty's life. So yeah, he really want Rick out of his life. It's funny, like, after this season, this is technically a pilot. They just basically, pulling up with Rick's shit. So anyway, let's get back to Rick and Morty, man. So, Rick took Morty to a dimension called, what's it called? Dimension 35C. He wants to find the mega seeds. You can tell this dimension was a bit of a shithole. It's just a shithole. Just it's a different dimension. It's a crappy, like, I can't really explain the dimension. So anyways, so I think Rick gave Morty a pep talk, saying like this situation could be scary, intimidating. Looking around, it's could be dangerous and scary. If you look at them and charge them like a bull, this is how people are grown. I dealt with all the time, and suddenly they got chased by this grey spider creature. Anyway, so they saw the mega trees. They're on top of the cliff. Rick gives Morty the gravity boots, and Morty just fall down the cliff. And Rick didn't tell Morty that he got to turn off the boots on the gravity. He has to turn on the button on the gravity boots to turn it on to allow to turn on. So he didn't tell him how the gravity boot works, and Morty just walked off the cliff, and his legs all mangled, dislocated, broken in 4 places, and Morty just compared Rick, to Hitler. Says like, you like Hitler? At least Hitler cares about Germany and something. Whoa! I think Morty, man, even though Rick is an asshole, but you compare him to Hitler, even though Hitler just basically throughout the late 30s, going into the mid 40s, he's just not wiped out Europe, like conquered Europe. I don't see Rick conquering fucking. Rick is a fucking murderer. Let's be real. Like, he just killed that Fred Larky guy. He's just like, I could say Rick is kind of a villain, but I don't want to get in more details. So basically, got his portal gun for brief minutes, and then he came back, inject Morty with the I think he called it the broken leg serum, and his legs kind of like pulled back in one place, before he fixed his broken legs. He tells Morty that he went to another dimension that is so advanced. The aging process is so halted. He had sex with younger women. Wow, that's some of the Rick and Morty jokes, in the early seasons that I don't think it really aged well. I think that it won't get away. I don't think they'll get away right now compared to almost a decade and a half ago. So he tells Morty that I'm guessing like the pool guns lost its juice, something like that. You have to go to interdimensional customs and tell Morty to stuff the mega seeds up his ass. Look at the mega seeds. They look like coconuts, punty coconuts. Like in real life that can be very uncomfortable. Like going back to Morty falling off the cliff. Morty's very lucky not to be alive. In real life, if that was real life, he could be dead. He'll be dead. Like broke. Both his legs will be broken, and he'll still be dead. Depending on how the feet Morty fall off that cliff. So anyway, so they went to interdimensional customs, whatever it's called. It's basically an intergalactical airport. Morty just came back from the bathroom, pointing like with the vaccines far up his ass, to get. There's no way to get home because like I said, Rick's portal gun is out of juice. So you got this guy. I think it's these creatures represent the intergalactic government. Tell Morty he has to go to another machine that checks up like butts or ass, and then just basically like, run, Morty. He said like why he needs to go over there, and then I'm guessing like it's referencing drugs. You can tell this is technically an airport. And they use the gravity boots. They gotta turn on because like Rick didn't inform Morty to tell him you got to turn on the button first on the boots to allow it to use them, so they kind of use the gravity boots. Rick says to Morty, the stupid became the master, and the dumbasses because they are basically these flies, bug flies. They're flying. They got fucking balls or testicles around their chin and their chest. Anyway, so it's funny like while doing their chase, they kind of smash like this. It's hard to describe. It's this fish creature. He was smoking this hookah or bong, and then they smashed it. Morty's coughed up this green creature, and it's basically died immediately, and then they're riding on a, I think they're riding on a like flying garbage truck in it, and then suddenly they kind of landed on this jelly creature, and then the coordinates, Rick's trying to pull it to allow them to get back to their dimension, and Morty says, I can't kill them, and Rick says, they're just robots, and Morty shot the creature, those fly creatures, and they find out they're not robots, they're actually, one's got shot in the legs, bleeding out, and Morty tells Rick they're not robots, and Rick tells Morty that, they're just bureaucrats, I don't like them. You can tell, like in the episode, in the pilot episode, you can tell, like with Rick, he sounded more like Doc Brown. You can tell. I think the show is basically a parody. No, it's based on. This show is basically based on Back to the Future. Because these characters, Rick and Morty was based on, because Rick is based on Doc Brown, and Morty's based on Marty McFly. And I think they're referencing Marty McFly in season 3. And I think they did a show, I think it was a clip show before the actual show. This is years before the actual show made. Reference, I think it's just called Doc and Marty. And I think the reason why I keep referencing Back to the Future because Family Guy keep referencing the film. It's on Netflix. By the way, if you want to watch Rick and Morty, it's on Netflix. I'm going to say it again in the end. So anyway, they managed to get through that portal. I'm guessing that portal is basically referencing Stargate SG-1. So Rick and Morty managed to get back to their dimension. This time into the cafeteria, and Jessica, the girl that Morty fancies, says, "Did you came to the cafeteria through a portal?" And Morty says, my Ferrari's at the shop. And Jessica says, "You're Morty, right?" And then Rick says, and Rick says, you get your phone number later. I can't really do the voice of Rick and Morty. You go, Rick does the burp, and Morty does, oh geez, and they got caught by Beth and Jerry, and and Rick is just basically says, Morty, why are you doing out of class? We talk to this. You and your parent, was it me and my parents are very disappointed with your behavior. Sorry, get my words out, stumbling. I'm gonna say it again. So, Morty, why are you doing out of class? We've been over this. Me and your parents and I are so disappointed with your behavior. And Rick says, no takers. And also, you had Jerry calling Rick Albert Eindouche. And, what's that? I think Beth says, what's that supposed to mean? And and then Jerry says, I'm a father, not an instigator. Or something like that, I think and also in this, and in the next scene, you had Jerry packing up Rick's stuff. He's about to send him to an old folks home, and then I think Jerry says to Rick, well, you have to build baskets and watch Paul Newman's movies on VHS. If you don't know what it is, VHS is videos. I grew up in that era. And then we have DVDs and Blu-rays now. We can stream on different platforms. Back then, you have to watch a TV show or a film on video. So yeah, he said Paul Newman films on VHS, sorry. Speaking too fast, by the way. and mentally scar the Boy Scouts every Christmas. Like, Jerry is not funny, you know. I don't really get the jokes, you know. He's referring to Rick as a pedophile. Well, I'm not going to get into that. He said early on, whether in the dimension with Morty, that, you know, he had sex with younger women. You know, I think Rick is about 60 or 70, something like that. I think, like, trying to get, you know, Morty's trying to get in the situation. Jerry tells Morty that, you know, you don't understand to get involved, and he just informing Morty that, you know, he's got a learning disability. And then suddenly, you know, Rick, I'm guessing, he's controlling Morty, saying, like, you know, answering the square root of pi, and what's it called, the law of, was it thermodynamics? Germanics. You know, I can't remember what he says, you know, and Morty just basically answered the question. So, and he kind of reminds Beth and Jerry that, you know, Morty's too young. Oh he said like, you know, what did he say? Oh yeah, he said like, he said to Beth and Jerry that, you know, he said it earlier that school's a waste of time. He said he's my little helper. He reminds me of me. He's going to do great science stuff, you know, later on in his life. And they kind of agree. And Jerry says to Rick that Morty needs to go to school, and they kind of agreed. So, and you know, Morty is so stoked about being smart, and Rick tells Morty that, you know, that's just the side effects of the mega beans or the mega seeds up his ass, you know, and he's gonna lose brain function and mobility skills in the next 72 hours, and he's on the floor like, oh, I can't really do it, man. He's just basically spazzing out. Rick says, you know, there's too many idiots in the world. Don't understand what's going on. I can't remember the rant, you know. He said he's gonna get more seeds and go on more adventures, and saying Rick and Morty forever. Rick and Morty on www.rickandmorty.com or .org. You know, it's typical Rick's nonsensical rants. He ended up doing a similar one in season 4. Season 3. Sorry, season 3. You know, like that was a bit iconic seeing Rick, you know, because in these, the first episode of season 3's nonsensical rants, well, Saskatchewan sauce, you know, you can hear the music in the background, you know, so, and that was the end of the show. So besides that, you know, it was a good episode. Not a great episode, but it was a good pilot to kick off the show, so I kind of like it, guys. What's your thoughts on it? Please leave thoughts in the comments section below, smash that button, and subscribe to the Central Man Network on YouTube. Be part of the Central Unit for more wrestling videos and more. And this is the Central Man officially signing out. Check you later.